Yo.
Hello.
This is the Downbelow RPG YouTube video. We are continuing to create an adventure together for you in short segments, usually 5 minutes, sometimes we go over. Today, Scene 3, question mark, or Scene 3, dun dun dun!
That's actually not too bad a way of introducing it. Basically, once we get to Scene 3 is where players have... in Scene 1 was basically the holding cell, where players are first thrown together. Scene 2, we've been calling the meetup. There were a couple of interstitial narrative scenes that could help move it on. The third major story scene, though, is the question of what do we do? Where do we go from here?
This is pretty much a climactic scene.
It is one of the climactic scenes. Not the climactic scene of the whole adventure/campaign. But in basically in narrative terms, this would be the climax of Act 1 or the midpoint of Act 2.
It's possible that if you're running this as a one-shot, that Act 1 is all there is.
Right.
But if you're running this as part of a campaign, this is going to be the climax of the session, but not the whole thing.
So this is the point where players decide where do we go from here and take steps to get there. As with anything where people have their head, where they have agency, there are functionally infinite ways this could go. But there's really two major outcomes. So you've discovered that there is this conspiracy after you. Maybe you've discovered what it's about, maybe you haven't. Maybe you still think that the conspiracy is just to send you to a Chinese prison camp and there's some local criminal who's set you up. Maybe you figured out that you are destined as a biodynamics test subject.
Maybe you know neither of these things and you're in hiding.
Whichever the case, there's really two major outcomes, and it basically boils down to, well, Ian mentioned this last time, fight versus flight. If you choose, we'll talk quickly about the flight outcome. The flight outcome should not be confused with a Harrison Ford movie called The Fugitive, because in The Fugitive, he doesn't do a lot of running from, he does a lot of running to. He's running to prove his innocence. He's not really a fugitive from something, he is a chaser of something. So don't get that confused. In the flight option, you're specifically running from the conspiracy. You have decided that you don't want to directly engage. Your characters have decided that it is too big. Your characters have decided that they can't or won't fight it for whatever reason. And so the rest of the campaign, the rest of the adventure, is going to be based around making that escape. If this is a one-shot, the rest of the adventure is probably going to be based around finding an exit strategy that will drop you off the grid, and if you're using this as an intro one-shot, drop you into Downbelow. If you're using this as an ongoing adventure, or weaving this into a campaign, this could very easily, a flight option could very easily be used to integrate you into one of the major societies or criminal organizations, because that is how you are escaping this conspiracy, by assuming a new identity. Ironically enough, the very people responsible for getting you in with this conspiracy can be quite mercenary indeed, and might just be able to say, hey, welcome, we'll fix you up with a new identity in exchange for stuff. That's the flight option. The flight option is, here's the scene, we are leaving.
Short recap of objective and danger. In the flight option, your objective is don't get the bad stuff that the bad guys are going to do to you done to you, and your danger is they will be dogging your footsteps, and there will always be a danger of the cops catching back up with you or the abductors abducting you.
And here's where I'm about to go over time, because there's a lot to talk about in the fight option, and I'm not actually going to talk about all of it. But I've got only about a minute left in my budget, so we're about to go over budget here, because this is a very important one. I mentioned The Fugitive for a reason before, and that is that the fight option, also known as the digging deeper option, also known as the fight the conspiracy, fight the man option, is probably not going to begin as a screw it, let's get in a main battle tank and assault the headquarters. For one, the biodynamics headquarters is not on the island. For two, the biodynamics headquarters might not know or care, and for three...
How the heck are they going to get a main battle tank?
There's that. So with this, really, it's not so much of a let's directly force of arms fight this conspiracy as a combination, let's not just run from this conspiracy, let's actually cut ourselves out of the conspiracy. If players are altruistic or paranoid enough, it could be let's cut the conspiracy open so it has a harder time doing this to other people. It might be a let's expose this conspiracy to the public. That one's actually going to be less effective in Downbelow than it would in some, because, as mentioned in previous videos, the vast majority of the world are content and complacent in a system that works. This is not...
But if you make a big media stink about something,
Right.
you can still make something stink. And another option is something along the lines of, let's try and get some bargaining power
Right.
to bargain with the conspiracy.
Possibly even let's take over this conspiracy if the players themselves are of a major moral gray bent.
And final side note that I'd like to put in before I let you have your head again is that just because they're not going to be getting in a main battle tank and assaulting the headquarters doesn't mean that they won't be arming up and trying to actually fight some dudes to get what they want out of this situation.
And
there may well be gunfights or fistfights or knife fights or whatever.
An assault on the server room can be a fantastic climax to this scene, as you are fighting your way to the physical location of the servers before they can be wiped, so that because you don't have anyone who can break in remotely.
Or identifying one of the people who was going to abduct you and abducting them when they're out for a beer.
So yeah, it's very important. I'm not saying that the action movie physical violence is not a part of this. Very much not. But narratively, the importance is not on the physical side. The importance is on the motivation side. So yeah, basically, wrapping this all up, this is the point where the players decide fight or flight. Now, either way, if you're running this as a one-shot, this is the end. We're done. Now, we're not done. We've got a little more to talk about in the upcoming days. But if you're running this as a one-shot, this is the end. If you're running this as an ongoing thing, this is the end of Act 1. You end Act 1 either by saying we are removing ourselves from the scene, the flight option, or by saying we're taking the fight to them. And in a one-shot, if you take the fight to them, you will have your catharsis, you will get your information, you may leave threads hanging, but you will get the closure you need. The big difference
get
between
yourself clear.
Narratively, and this is my last note, narratively the big difference between a one-shot and an ongoing campaign, the same events happen. In a one-shot, you get yourself clear, and you might end on a bittersweet note, but you're clear. In a campaign, if you might still get yourself clear, but the dangling threads are thicker, heavier, and more closely tied. As opposed to a bittersweet ending, it is an ending with consequences that will pull you forward into Act 2. So from a story side, that's the end of Act 1, the fight or flight, what happens next, and tomorrow I'll turn it over to Ian to talk about some mechanics of this scene.
All right, tomorrow.